Good morning and welcome to the Cabinet on the 6th of July. I've got the agenda. Before we go into the agenda, just to let you know that there is no planned fire alarm scheduled for this time. If the fire alarm goes, then use the normal exit, make your way out of the building to the car park near to the Windmill Pub. Microphones, ensure that the microphone is in front of you so that people can hear you clearly and that you are logged on. Don't move the microphone because people will be watching in and they need to be able to hear what you say. Before we go on to the agenda, I've had a request from Councillor Curtis, who would like to say something before the meeting begins.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm sure we would all very much like to congratulate all of the UK teams that have been taking part in the World Cup in Mexico, Canada and the United States. And I'm sure we're all looking forward to the quarter-final match between Norway and England led by Harry Kane, following his the team's stunning victory in the early hours of this morning. I'm sure we would all like to wish them the very best in the next match. The match last night, it was only the third time, I understand, that the Mexican team has been defeated in its home ground, the Aztec Stadium. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. That's really appreciated. I'm sure that not everybody stayed up all night, but a lot of people did. Okay, Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've been up since 2 o'clock and I'm wired. So the good news is you're going to get such an easy ride today, and then I'm crashing this afternoon.
And I've also had a request from the Chief Executive, who would also like to speak on a slightly more sober matter.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This isn't Match the Day. So just wanted to make an announcement in relation to the papers which are being produced for the Joint Cabinet Committee on the 14th of July. As you will be aware, they were published, and thank you to the team and thank you to the South Warwickshire Local Plan team who've done a huge amount of work in getting those papers published, and they're live, they're online as of Friday. The pages for the meeting run in excess of 1,000 pages, and we are in the process of printing those now. They will not be completed for distribution until probably Wednesday, but we might have some, well, we will have some early versions available on Tuesday. If you do want one of those early versions, we are going to prioritise the Cabinet and the OSC, but if you could let Olivia know, please, and then we'll, by email, we'll get those to you as soon as we can.
Just on that point, Chief Exec, there is a meeting in Bidford on Friday, so I think certainly one copy for Bidford, so it's available for the public meeting on Friday. If we can get on the priority list for printing, would be cool.
It would also be massively helpful if members could collect their papers for that particular meeting as well, given the scale of them. Thank you.
Yes, I certainly would recommend that. I usually, well, I have a standing position now that everything is left here for me to pick up because it sometimes the delivery just takes too long. Okay, moving on to the agenda, we've got apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence? No, I can't see anybody that is normally here. That I don't know. Anyway, disclosures of interest. Okay.
I need to declare an interest in relation to item 5, as my son was the Chief Executive of the Warwickshire Community Council. I will absent myself from the meeting.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Next we have the minutes, and are you all in agreement with the minutes of the last Cabinet? And if so, can I have somebody that will propose, Councillor Coles and Councillor Grocott to second? Are you all happy with those minutes? Okay, accepted. Thank you. Next item is privately managed public open spaces, flood alleviation schemes and estate road, and this is the recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee as well as from the Task and Finish Group. I would like to just start on this one by saying that this was something that I brought to the Council in 2019 on behalf of the Pastures residents estate in Kinnerton. They came and brought a petition, and we asked questions about a change of policy that took place in 2005. In 2005, the policy paper from this council encouraged private management of public open spaces. And as a result, there has been that certain issues arose as a result of that. A new SPG has been brought in and adopted, but the historic situation still exists. So reference in this paper has been made to government and following up on the Competition and Market Authority asking for legislative change, and that's in hand. So what is here is about what the councillors can do about the current position of the council, what powers it's got to address some of the equity concerns, maintenance on ongoing problems, and what it can do going forward. So it's therefore this report is looking at what is in the control of the council to address what was a historic situation, and I'm just wondering whether I've got anybody that wants to particularly address the council on this. Councillor Grocott, would you like to go first? Yeah, and then Councillor Pemberton, and then Councillor Wally Hoggins, and then Councillor Passingham.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, the Task and Finish group worked from October through to March, and I was in observation quite a few of those meetings because obviously being a member of the Cabinet, it coming under the auspices of overview and scrutiny, I couldn't actually take part in it, but I was very kindly allowed to observe and also contribute when I felt necessary. So I'd like to thank the chair of the Task and Finish group and the other panel members for their indulgence. I think that as somebody who has over 6 large developments in her ward, all which have very ingrained problems with the Section 106 agreements and with the privately managed open spaces, this was a very timely report and an investigation into the issues. I would like to also thank the officers that assisted with this Task and Finish group. There was an awful lot of work that was done by the Deputy Chief Exec, but I'd also like to mention the very capable Section 106 officer in Alison Willits that we had now working in planning, because as an administration we did bring in some officers before this was mentioned to actually support with this detail, because as our leader mentioned, she'd been aware of this since 2019. She has been doing an awful lot of work at looking at historic Section 106 agreements and the details of them, and also the Open Spaces Officer in the Environmental and Neighbourhood Services, Owen, who's been looking at the management plans, which again are hanging over from the Section 106 agreements that were agreed back in sort of 2012 and 2014 in one case. And I think this is what an important thing coming forward with the local plan is that an awful lot of these agreements went through as part of on appeal when we did not have a local plan to push back from this. And it has caused an awful lot of work now. And I'd like to also pay tribute to the parish councillors and the actual residents as well that are now going through this and working very hard with these officers to bring existing issues to a head. Thank you.
I've now got Councillor Pemberton, then Councillor Wally Hoggins, then Councillor Passingham.
Thank you very much. I'm speaking as the co-sponsor of the notice of motion with Councillor Letty Petrovic. I'm not quite sure enjoying maternity leave. She's probably busier than the rest of us and certainly wouldn't have catched last night's festivities.
I think I was the seconder of this particular motion, notice of motion. The original notice of motion.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're cutting across each other. But yes, I'm not quite sure which of us was playing Kane and Bellingham, but we've got that across the line. I think some interesting things have come out of all of this. Councillor Grocott references the Section 106 agreements, and actually one of the challenges has been how we actually manage the implementation and adherence to Section 106 agreements by developers. And one of the key things that's changed and is already bearing fruit is that you have the officer dealing with the enforcement is the same officer dealing with the Section 106s, because what's coming out is Section 106s are being had not been adhered to. They've got to be, some of them have got to be redone and redone again, and having the same officer having the full 360 on it is actually a really good step forward. And that, alongside the open spaces officer, means that from our perspective as an organisation, we're in a much better place to be able to look at the historical. So I think this is a piece of work whereby members have had an issue that they've taken. Officers have worked really hard to support. Sorry, did I miss? Sorry, you go.
Do you want to come in? Marcia Eccleston, Head of Law, Governance and Monitoring Officer.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor. I think I heard a reference to redoing Section 106s, and I just wanted to be clear that we're not at a stage where we can look back at Section 106s retrospectively.
No, that's my
and I just want to make it clear.
So, no, that's my generalisation. What's happening is that A, there has been non-adherence to existing 106s, and B, what's also happening is that when sites are being looked at on the ground, then the implementation, certainly in my ward, we've got an example whereby actually there's going to be a further update, if you will. It's not redoing Section 106. What I'm trying to get to is that officers are doing practical work on the ground so that it ensures the best of outcomes. And that is involving, certainly in the case in Bedford, is involving because they haven't actually got to practical completion. When you've gone back into it, they've not adhered to the Section 106. But opportunities are being taken to review, for example, things like landscaping, because actually there's a better landscaping scheme to be had than the one that was in the 106. So with working with the developer, you're getting into a better place. So what I'm trying to say in a long roundabout way is the officers are absolutely on the case with this. And I'd like to pay tribute to Alison Villas myself, because she's really got a hold of this thing. And I think in terms of the toolkit, and certainly some of the work that she's been done over the last 6 months or so, should end up with a couple of good case studies that will then enable officers to circulate that to other members so they can see what actually can be done and how you will approach these things in your own wards, in your own settings. So it's been a piece of work that's actually moved things on and is really positive.
Thank you very much indeed. And now got Councillor Sarah Whalley-Huggins.
Thank you. I don't take, notwithstanding the efforts made by officers and those sitting on the task and finish group, I'm not going to be fulsome in my unbridled joy at this, mainly because we are still in a situation where the report tells us that the council can't get involved and residents still need to seek independent legal advice, which most of them can't afford. People are still paying twice, council tax to the authority and the stealth tax to the management companies. We are talking about getting an information card out, I believe, at the end of December. I would think that's to do with the workload of the current council, and I acknowledge that. But that's a bit like a sympathy card, really. It is very important that we now have a very good grasp of the scale of the situation across Stratford, and I think that's really important, that residents do feel as if they've been heard. But we have no teeth, and it would have been useful to have seen the written representations made to central government and to the local MP, and their responses and the responses that we received as a result of those representations.
Can I just say that actually representation was made to the government, that they looked at the Competition and Market Authority report, and council did feed in to government about the situation.
Yes, I did say that it would have been useful to see the response that we made, because that helps with the transparency of it all. Because I'm still not sure what tangible benefits this task and finish group has given to those residents who are still suffering at the hands of these maintenance companies. We've done some laudable things here. It says we've done a lot of chatter here, but what actual tangible difference have we made? And I suggest to you all, not a great deal. Thank you.
Councillor Passingham.
Yes, I was on the task and finish group as well, and like Councillor Grocott, I've got 6 large estates in my ward. They've all got different S106 agreements. They've all been interpreted differently by the developers. It's led to lots and lots of inequity, not between the different residents groups and also with the rest of the town. The S106 agreements, they might have been imposed by the inspector, but they were still signed by the district council. And the district council still has obligations to those residents that are written into the S106 agreements. And like Councillor Wally Hoggins, I agree that it's no good saying to residents, we can't give legal advice, you've got to go and get it. These S106 were agreed by the district council. There are district council obligations in it, and the district council needs to remind developers of their obligations, in the very least, not give any legal advice. I don't think anybody thinks that's practical, but there should be strong wording, and a lot depends on this checklist that is being developed by the planning department, and what that says, and what authority that will give the enforcement officer to ask the developers for things like the memorandum of the setting up of these companies, what's in them, because it's all very vague. We need to try and insist that the rights of the residents are included in these memorandums, and we need to try and insist that the things that the developers have been ignoring for the last 7 or 8 years, in my ward, for instance, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere else, that they are retrospectively repaired by the developers. So I welcome the report, but I'm looking forward to the checklist and hope that it covers thoroughly all the things that need to be done to repair all the inequities that have happened over the last 8, 9, 10 years.
Can I just say that this was a policy adopted by this council in 2005. I wasn't the leader, I was not in control, but by the administration at the time, nobody, absolutely nobody, raised this as an issue until I came forward in 2019, when Councillor Sarah Wally Hoggins was actually the portfolio holder and found that did not know anything about this. Nobody of the administration at that time ever raised a single issue, raised the issue about these public open spaces and the private sector estate management until even after 2019, it was a struggle to be able to get the SPG changed. I wrote an article in 2025, March 25, on the issue, where nationally the Competition and Markets Authority had raised this as an issue across the country and explained the background and the legal problems and the legal restrictions of councils across the country. It had got to a stage between 2021 and 2022 when 80% of new homes built by the 11 biggest builders, and we know where some of those, who were supporting those 11 biggest builders, they were all becoming subject to estate management charges, and yet nobody raised it as an issue. That is the issue. That is where I get most annoyed and angry. I've now got Councillor Gist who wants to come in at this stage.
I just wanted to say, in response to Councillor Passingham's remark, it's not just not practical for the council not to give legal advice, it's not allowed. We just can't. Our lawyers act for the district council. But, well, you said it wasn't practical. It's not just not practical, it is not permitted.
See, as a council, we have to obey the legal restrictions. I've got Councillor Pemberton and then Councillor Sarah Wally Hoggins. And then I will ask Councillor Coucher to wind up.
And relax. So, I would just observe that the work around the SPD did start under the previous administration. This administration completed it.
After the 2019 petition was brought to you.
Chair, if you wouldn't perhaps afford me the opportunity to say without...
Chair.
Yes, Marcus Eckerson, Monitoring Officer.
Just a reminder that we still are in a pre-election period.
That point is taken. Oh, thank you very much indeed for reminding us. Councillor Pemberton, do you want to proceed?
And perhaps, Chair, you might afford me the courtesy of allowing me to finish what I was going to say, because I was going to go on to say that it's not my job to defend this administration. However, as far as councillors, particularly Councillor Wally Hoggins, concerned, it's absolutely right. We are not in a position where we are able to give any form of legal advice around the agreements that individual residents have signed when they've been purchasing properties. And nobody's ever suggested that that was within the art of the possible. But I go back to the fact, and to pick up Councillor Passingham's point, the approach now being taken by officers, and I have seen evidence that change can be and is being affected on a site, is happening in Bidford. And I would just ask Councillor Passingham to afford the officer a little bit of slack to be able to get to the ones that are there. And actually, some of the work that's being done on a site where, in Bidford, where Alison's working hard, I've been working hard with the MP. Everybody's played 4-4-2 on this, and we've got a result. And actually, what you're going to get is the learnings from this piece of work, because you have got one of the big house builders actually doing what, you know, they're being pulled into line, and that's by a combination of the officer, the residents, the district member, the MP, bringing pressure to bear of different types, and it is a way to move forward. So I would just ask Councillor Passingham for his forbearance, because I have no doubt that the same approach is going to be taken across other sites. As I say, it's not my job to defend the administration, but let's be fair about this. There is work, and good work, being done. So I would leave it at that.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Sarah Wally-Hoggins, and then Councillor Passingham, and then Councillor Coucher will wind up.
Thank you. I think it's very sad that you've used such clipped tones in talking about myself when I was the portfolio holder for such a short space of time. However, Councillor Junod, I would say this, I was fully aware of the situation with regard to service charges, because what you don't realise is that I've actually lived in 2 properties where there were service charges attached, but when I became a councillor, I was not living in such a property. And you raised the matter, and that matter was raised amongst the cabinet members and also to the executive in charge of it. So to try to imply through your clipped tones that I knew nothing about it is in fact not true. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a recording of the verbal recording of that meeting. Councillor Passingham, and then Councillor Coucher.
Yeah, in response to Councillor Pemberton, I do agree absolutely that Alison Willis has done a really good job, and she's exactly the right person to try and retrospectively get improvements to all of this. And I also think we would like to commend the present administration for addressing the problem and putting resources into it. It is just such a massive problem in my ward, and it would, but a lot depends on the checklist and the district council fully recognising the obligations in that S106 agreement, even though it's not the present administration is not responsible for them.
Councillor Coucher.
Thank you very much, Chair. I mean, clearly we are dealing with some pretty ill thought out legislation that went through in the history, and I think it's we inherited certainly when we came into power, and one of the priorities that came immediately on my desk was this needed to be sorted out, because frankly we have got ourselves into, as Sarah Wally-Huggins has said, some pretty awful situations where people are having to pay twice, and yet they don't have exclusive use of their facilities. Anybody else can come in who aren't paying towards them, and it is very, very unfair altogether. I do think, as I say, I think it was very ill thought out legislation. I think probably prompted by the thing that we could actually save public money by putting costs onto individual residents. So the first thing that we did here was to ensure that going forward, because every single meeting I had as portfolio holder with developers were, we want to develop this area and we'll use a private management company. And I said, no, you won't, because that will be the very last thing that will happen. We will go through a process, which we then produced a new SPD as a result of that. And so therefore, going forward, I do not anticipate that we're going to have this mess continuing. Now, where I think the task and finish group has really contributed an awful lot, it is clearly examining what we possibly can do in relation to those agreements that are already in place. We as an administration have put substantial additional resource both into 106 agreements, which were never monitored prior to us coming on board. There was no resource there whatsoever. We also had no open spaces officer for this authority at all, and we resourced that as well. So I think we have been very positive in terms of the things that we have done. I have to say that I think the only way that we are going to unscramble some of the messes on this estate is through negotiation, and that is, I mean, obviously, Councillor Pemberton, that's what you've been doing in Bidford. I've done it in relation to one site in Wellesbourne as well. And it's really by both parties, and very often involving parish councils who are very, very anxious about taking on these additional responsibilities because of the liabilities that come with it. But we have to work closely together going forward. We are going to, as a result of the local plan, have another set of housing developments here. We cannot afford to have the mess that we've inherited again. So I would praise the work that's been done by officers, but also by this task and finish group, who I think have really attended to this in a very timely manner. And I have come forward with a series of recommendations which I fully support.
Thank you very much indeed. And we do have a set of recommendations, but before I go to the recommendations, we also had mention in the written report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, the report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Do you, Councillor Harvey, do you want to come in at this stage, or do you want to kind of leave it to your general wind up at the end? You are welcome to make sure that that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee view is put.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't really have a lot to say about this. I echo Councillor Couch's remarks. This has been a good illustration of how Task and Finish Group should work. It does credit to OSC generally, and I'm pleased that these recommendations are being taken seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We now have recommendations to the Council. I'm happy to propose those recommendations. Do we have somebody prepared to second those? Councillor Coucher, are you all in favour of the recommendations to go forward from to the Council?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. We're now moving on to the next item, which is the notice of motion of funding for warm hubs. And Councillor Coucher has left the meeting at this stage. So we have to consider the response to the notice of motion for funding for warm hubs as presented to the Council meeting on the 20th of April 2026. And this comes under the portfolio of Councillor Coles. Councillor Coles, do you want to kind of take this and say anything before I bring other people in? Okay. Are we, Councillor Harvey, because I know that this came up at Overview and Scrutiny, do you want to kind of put out what came forward at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the we had the benefit of Councillor Shenton, who spoke in front of the OSC last week, and his complaint was twofold, really. One, that he hadn't been consulted, hadn't had any discussions personally, neither he nor the other co-sponsor of this particular motion, which I would hesitate to use the word discourteous, but it would have been beneficial had he had the opportunity. But the more substantive point is that the set of recommendations goes far beyond what was asked in the motion. Councillor Shenton was at pains to make the point that what the motion asked for was a one-off payment contribution of £50,000. The response to the motion is, A, it doesn't provide that, it provides a different amount of money, and it goes on to provide things which weren't the subject of the motion at all, worthy though they may be. So I just want I want the members of the Cabinet to be aware of the criticism from the proposer of the motion that it doesn't actually address the issue of £50,000 as a one-off payment, and I'll leave you to decide whether you want to amend or vary, or whether you are happy to proceed on the basis as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. That is a very useful view. Do we want, have the no proposals or notice of motion put forward and registered that they want to speak at all? Okay, so I can ask them to come forward if anybody wants to come forward.
Thank you, Chair.
You have 5 minutes. Is that between the two or?
So if more than one person's going to speak, we've got 5 minutes between you.
That's fine.
So,
Yep, that'll be fine. This decision comes down to one simple question. Should the Cabinet reject a proposal that delivers continuing funding to warm hubs at no additional cost to the council taxpayer without first speaking to the people who designed it? The motion on notice was straightforward. It sought a one-off grant to demonstrate the council's support for warm hubs and to unlock wider support from Cadent. Instead, the report answers many questions that were never asked, while failing to answer the one that was. Most concerning is the assumption that any replacement organisation would inevitably suffer the same fate as WRCC. No one spoke to Councillor Fleming or me about governance, ring-fencing funding, or how the proposed community interest company would work. Cadent is willing to support this model, including the administration costs. The grant requested was for warm hubs alone, not to create another bureaucracy. Our proposal achieves the same objective without increasing pressure on officers and without additional cost to the council taxpayer. We've learned lessons from WRCC through stronger governance, scrutiny, and ring-fenced funding. To reiterate what I've said, the motion asks for a one-off warm hub grant. The report answers different questions, no consultation with proposers. The most significant example is section 1.3.6, where the report concludes that any replacement organisation would ultimately face the same fate as WRCC. That's a remarkable conclusion because it's unsupported by evidence. No one asked us how the proposed CIC would operate. No one asked what governance arrangements would be put in place. No one asked what financial controls would exist. No one asked how we intended to ensure the mistakes of WRCC could never be repeated. Yet the report confidently concludes that history would simply repeat itself. That is not evidence-based decision-making. Section 1.3.6 is assumption and not evidence. So, my final point would be that I would ask you to judge this proposal on the evidence, not on assumptions. If this proposal can protect warm hubs, attract Cadent support, and do so at no additional cost to the council taxpayer, then what is the downside? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fleming.
Yeah, I won't go through all the things that Councillor Shenton's just mentioned, but in reality, we're disappointed in the report. There was no interaction apart from a visit I had from an officer one Wednesday morning at the Warm Hub. We didn't ask for a 5-year plan. It's not in our vision at all. None of these other services that are discussed were even considered at all. We know why WRCC failed, and we won't be making the same mistakes. Regardless of the outcome from STC, we will proceed, albeit slower, and become a collaborative partner with Cadent and allow Warm Hub members to access the Cadent portal that allows them to access many agencies that are actually tied into that. And we just want to make sure that these people keep the service that they've been used to. I mean, Bidford's been running since September 21. We have between 70 and 90 people, you know, most weeks. And we think we're doing a good job with that. And there are other 43 Warm Hubs that do a similar job. And it's our job to make sure that that continues. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and that's, I certainly appreciate the work of Warm Hubs. Actually, across the country, is some good practice, but they're actually Warm Hubs is a rather historic term. Elsewhere in the country, it's been superseded to become community hubs because social isolation is also a really big issue. Just a clarification, if I might. You said the notice of motion said that there would be no cost to the council, and yet in the notice of motion it definitely said that they should earmark a reserve 50,000. That seems to be two different points of view.
So I was quite clear that we were asking, as I've just said in my speech, asking for a grant, one-off grant of £50,000, which would be used purely to fund Warm Hubs with no administration costs on top. So it's a grant, and it could have been £25,000, it could have been £50,000, but we've not been consulted at any point, Chair, on this.
And
so
the other
we weren't
thing
given
is
the
that
opportunity to respond.
And the other thing is that in the motor motion it said funding for 43 Warm Hubs, but I understand there were only 27 actually, of 24.
I think that 24 is the 24 they found. There are obviously other Warm Hubs around that haven't been registered, who haven't come forward. That is the case. Warm Hubs do come and go, the smaller ones. That is definitely the case, and I can see that Nick was nodding at that point and accepts that point. So it's a reasonable assumption that 43 at one point were there. Whether there's 43 now or whether there's 53 or 23 is not really the point.
Is this an appropriate time to bring in the portfolio holder, maybe the officer as well? If the officers have any comment, or would the... Yeah.
So I'm going to just jump in first and apologise. We should have engaged with you. Kind of, I guess what happened was the speed in terms of trying to get the money through. We see this as being, you know, we don't agree with your proposal. We don't think it considers sort of the broader holistic point, but I absolutely accept and acknowledge and take full responsibility for the fact that we should have engaged with you, and I'm sorry for that. And I wanted to sort of start the discussion with that point.
And can I also clarify, there does seem to be a bit of a point of issue over who's engaged with Cadent, because and whether the engagement was on behalf of an individual or behalf of the council as well, because that needs clarification.
I think poor engagement is probably a theme around this entire issue. We didn't have engagement from your hub in the work we did when we were trying to understand kind of what we would need to do as a council following the demise of Warwickshire Rural CC, but also Cadent don't appear to be engaging with us, and instead of driving engagement through yourselves, which again is just great work in terms of your hubs, but we need to look at this more holistically in terms of what's best value for money, what delivers the right governance in terms of, you know, a councillor putting forward a proposal for a £50,000 grant without that following any procurement process. I think when I was doing some work around this, I considered the comparison, and I hope you don't mind, Councillor Wally-Hoggins, but I'm going to bring you in because you're always so good at declaring your interest. But if you were bringing forward a proposal to start a CIC around an oil syndicate, we would all very clearly see that that might not be appropriate. And for me, it's a similar thing. It's about us saying, actually, what's the right mechanism here? So I think it is a point that there has been really poor engagement on a number of levels here.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Coles, do you want to say anything at all?
Well, I don't know if there's anything left, Chair, but nevertheless, I will. Actually, I thank you for your contributions, and thank you to Councillor Fleming and Councillor Shenton. I think that we are all aware of the good work that hubs do, and I think as a council we would really like to ensure that all our residents who are in need of these have access, and so I think there is still work to be done on identifying which organisations, which hubs would want to have access to these funds. Now, I know, Councillor, you asked originally for a grant for 50,000. That is still, even if it's 50,000, it is still money from SDC and therefore residents' money. So therefore we have to be mindful of the processes of how this money is applied for, how it is given, who it is given to, as we would with any council money, although of course all our hearts are in supporting the continuation of warm hubs. I'm afraid I am still just a little bit not quite clear. I did watch, I'm afraid I wasn't able to be at the overview and scrutiny of your contribution, but I did watch it afterwards, and I'm sure, and I just wanted to check that I'm correct, that you said you had secured the funding you needed for the charity. It certainly sounded like you said you had the funds to do it and you didn't need the SDC money. Is my understanding of that correct?
Yes, Councillor Shenton, and then I'll bring Councillor Pemberton in.
Yes, please, just to...
Thank you very much. Right, so first of all, what I did say was, yes, we're looking at the funding. We haven't secured the funding, but Cadent are saying that they will work with us because they like our model, and that's what the point I was getting over. On the other score, I hear that there's been a lot of bad communication. Well, I don't think there has been any bad communication from this side. Nobody contacted us. You didn't contact us. Nick didn't contact us. You didn't contact me, Liz. And yet we pass all the time. Not one of you contacted me. If you felt that you had a problem with the warm hubs, why didn't you contact me? Why didn't you contact Bill?
Can I bring in the monitoring officer at this stage, please?
I fail to understand why you would make such a comment.
I've had an intervention by the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a reminder that when our Speaker, Councillor Shenton, was asked to respond, it was on a specific point, and then you went on to talk about another point in a more detailed and more less politician-style way than we'd expect. So I'd ask you to temper your responses when speaking to the Chair and in the Chamber.
I would remind... Monitoring officer, but I would remind you that the chair did give me the opportunity to respond to an accusation that we hadn't been cooperative.
Can I bring in the chief executive at this stage as well, please?
Thank you. And Councillor Shannon, just want to remind, Hannah did leave with an apology, so that was given in good faith, and hopefully that can be received in good faith. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, if I might.
The monitoring officer first, please.
Yeah. So as I understand it, and I just need to be very clear, when the chair asked and allowed for you to respond, it was in response to Councillor Coles, not the point on the communication that you've referenced that was already being apologised about already.
And I'll come back, monitoring officer, on that. If you rewind the tape, you will see the conversation
at this point, please. Councillor Pemberton, I believe you also had an indication that you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. So, everybody wants to do the right thing here, okay? My understanding of what is trying to be achieved by the proposer and the seconder is to secure the operation of warm hubs. And they are a misnomer these days. They are much more about social isolation. And having been to the Bedford one, because it's just down the road, that's exactly what's happening. And different agencies are coming in, like CAB, etc. So it's doing all of that stuff. And what the two members have gone on and done, the funder, as I understand it, pretty much across England is Cadent. And as I understand it, they're Cadent are keen on like a community interest company model. And I understand they're quite, I think Councillor Shenton is trying to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But I would suspect, from what I understand of how they've explained it to me, is that a CIC could be up and running by the end of the summer, which Cadent could work with. It strikes me that, to some degree, the report answers, rather than answering the question that was asked, it answers the question it wish it was asked, which is, how do we replace the wider operations of WRCC, rural housing enabler? I think we're getting an officer for Meals on Wheels, all those kind of things. The members are focused on the narrow bit about warm hub operation and the oil syndicate. And it strikes me the two will probably end up working in tandem, in as much as if the warm hub bit gets up and running, is funded by Cadent through a CIC, and that doesn't impact the public purse. If this council wants to investigate the other wraparound bits that could dovetail and feed into warm hubs, then knock yourselves out in that sense. That's great, fantastic. And one of the things might be worth... May I finish my point, Chair? It may well be, and I think taking the lead from the head of service, that perhaps it might be worth you just parking this item to try and close that communication loop before the next cabinet, so that you can work out to what extent the two strands can and should dovetail. So you might want to park that. Alternatively, your choice is whether you go with these recommendations and you're going to commit yourself to, we're going to do all this work and we're going to commit budget and we're going to spend it. Those are your two. I would suggest that there might be two options for you. It might be, and I think I bring the chair of OSC in this, so I think probably shares that view, that it might well be worth you guys just considering pulling this item for the moment, coming back at the next cabinet. Councillor Coase, you laugh. I'm just trying to help you with a solution. It's not my job to provide a solution, but don't...
Can I bring Councillor Coles in at this stage, please? Councillor Coles.
Hooray! Thank you for... Oops. Again, right, okay. Apart from being sabotaged by the technology, this is obviously a very emotive subject. I would prefer to be, in my mind, to be clear about what was going. As I understand it, you don't have the grant and you haven't got the charity set up, but it is en route. But you expect to have the funding. Well, I think I might suggest, Chair, because the paper that was written, and I was very welcoming to this paper because it does provide a great deal of clarity in the fog of the charity folding, which is a great shame. These items were referenced in the Warm Hub, and it's novel to have a councillor complain they've been given too much information and rather too little. If I could continue, it's my go. I am concerned because my portfolio does work with a lot of local charities, and I am definitely been given the information that they are under pressure because of the costs and the pressure on them to raise funding. I understand that Cadent awards the money annually, so you would start up a new CIC and you would be under pressure annually to renew that grant, and it could be withdrawn at any time. You would have set up your charity, you would have had the costs involved, and you would be employing staff, and that would always be reliant on receiving that grant. And I think that is why this is referenced in this way in this report. You are always, as with every charity, faced with an annual need to replace that grant rather than having a confirmed 5 years. And that is the issue that I see with so many other charities. With grant, it is a very difficult situation to be in because you are constantly having to renew every year your basic source of funding, and that is a pressure. So that is why this was addressed with reference to the Warwickshire Rural. It is the pressure that all local charities, all national charities face, the constant need to find your funds in essentially a falling market. I think, from what I understand, that you feel relatively confident in being able to set up your CIC, get that grant, and find the funding you need for your warm hubs. Now, officers have very kindly found out to me, I believe there are 13 accredited, 24 in action that we're aware of, and obviously there are some that are acting as warm hubs, but we don't necessarily know about. They just get on and do their thing, or it's being run in a building which is already in play for something and has the space to do it, and I'm aware of several of those. My suggestion, which I will throw to the meeting, is that if you are comfortable with that, and you're pretty sure of the funding, that we earmark the £25,000 in a reserve to deal with the other items as they come forward, as they're presented with us to support things like isolation, cost of living, and those items, and that we let you run with your CIC with the funding that you feel pretty confident that you have got secured. That would be my suggestion, and then all issues. Are you happy? This seems to be see where we're going. That you are confident, and if cadence of funding the cost, that's brilliant, because it is such a pressure on local charities, and then that we earmark in the reserve the 25,000, and we see how things go forward.
I think actually I would rather see, and I want to make sure that these community hubs become properly run and properly established and properly supported. At the moment, I do not think that there is security for them, and I do not think that a CIC will give that security long term. I want to make sure that this council is looking at all of those issues that were run by WRCC and making sure that the community hubs run properly, particularly with LGR coming down the line as well. Councillor Coles, do you want to come back? And then,
Councillor
Hannah Buckley.
So we know that we've got some of our hubs, and I'm not going to call them warm hubs because I think that's particularly important given the weather that we're experiencing at the moment. And we do know that some of them are already experiencing financial difficulties. So we do want to have the money available for us to ensure that none of those hubs have to cease or experience, perhaps reduced frequency. So we definitely do want to continue with the proposal as set out. The notice of motion actually was broader. The Meals on Wheels were referenced, the oil syndicate, it was much broader, and therefore we incorporated within the report a broader update, but the specific provisions are in relation to this. If we had kept it solely to the question that was asked, the answer would have been, no, we don't think it's appropriate to grant £50,000 of the council's money to a CIC which doesn't exist outside of procurement processes. And therefore what this has tried to be is solutions focused to say, we agree, we don't want any of these hubs to cease operating. We think they're incredibly valuable. The point about them being broader community hubs is really key given some of the sort of the weather at the other end of the scale that we're experiencing. And so this was about saying, let's have some money that is immediately available to make sure that we don't lose anything that's really valuable in the district. And then we will do some more detailed work so that we have got an evidence base going forward. There is nothing to say that that might not mean the CIC, which you've said will be fully funded and operational from Cadent without this £50,000, which isn't evidence-based, it's a sum of money, that won't be part of the solution. But this is about saying, actually, what can we do now that continues these vital services in our district whilst we go away and do that more detailed piece of work, of which your proposed CIC may or may not be part of the answer.
Got Councillor Wally Huggins and then Councillor Pemberton, and then I will wind up. My apologies. Councillor Carvey, do you want to come in at first then? And because we didn't reference the overview and scrutiny point, and then I will bring Councillor Wally Huggins and then Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chairman. Very simply, experience tells me that it's not always a good thing to be making policy on the hoof in a committee meeting. There is clearly unhappiness from the proposer of the motion about whether their motion has actually been addressed or not. I'll be bold and suggest that I think you have two options as a cabinet. I think one option would be to proceed as recommended, and despite the debate. The other option I think you have is to withdraw the item from this meeting, hold further discussions, the sort of discussions for which the officer initially started with an apology, to get to the point, hopefully, where the proposers of the motion and the officers are agreed, and for that item to come back to the committee, to the cabinet at its next meeting. But having said that, I realise I'm overstepping my boundaries, and it's an entirely matter for you.
But thank you for that intervention. I would ask whether or not we could add an extra item, but we'll come back to that one. Councillor Sarah Waller-Huggins and then Councillor Darren Pemberton.
Yes, I did declare an interest at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee because, as referenced by Hannah, my husband's company does operate or has operated oil syndicates in the past. Can I make it very clear that nobody has approached me for any advice regarding how you set up an oil syndicate? So let me just park that. All right, I'm not here today to talk about that, and I was a little bit taken aback when I saw it on the papers. All right, so I don't think that I've breached any code of conduct by that. All right, but again, it's another matter of asking for advice from people that know how these things run. Can I just say how heartened I was, Councillor Coles, that you've got mind to how public money is being spent finally within the budget. But can I just point out that we do have a general reserve fund of over £20 million within this council, and by comparison, it's a very modest amount that was being asked for here. I think we do need to be very, very clear here that the warm hubs, as they've been operating, have been delivering a vital service. Nobody in this room is disagreeing with that. But what the warm hubs, community hubs, the cool hubs, if they've got air conditioning now, I'm quite sure, what they offer to us is a place for officers now to go out and see points of information for them to go out, speak to residents. It's a bit like Age UK. They will choose where they go. We can use that as a hub for passing on that information about what we've referenced here, the oil syndicates. We don't need to set up something that failed in its last inception. We need to be very, very careful about that. So I don't think there's a single taxpayer in Stratford that would say, no, I don't want any of my money helping to keep the vulnerable warm in the winter. All people want that to happen. This is a really good use of public money. But I think that we've gone so far from the original proposals as to make this unfathomable that this is the report that is coming back. So I think that we need to be very careful the way that we proceed now. And I also wanted to say that we all speak with passion about keeping the vulnerable warm. We all know the reasons why, and we're not going to say that in this room, all right? But I applaud Councillor Fielding and Councillor Shenton. You've done an amazing job, Fleming, sorry, but you've done an amazing job bringing this forward. And let's not muddy the waters too much when what might actually be required is two separate papers and a better response to the initial notice on motion. Thank you.
Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. The options available to the Cabinet are to approve the recommendations or to amend or request the development of an alternative set of recommendations, or not to approve the recommendations and draw a close to the work. Strikes me that development of an alternative set is where certainly part of the room would seem to want to be. But I'd also just want to pick up on the leader's comments, because the public sector has historically worked with the third sector in the delivery of a number of services. And that is a well-trodden, well-worn path, and everybody signs up to that. My reading of what the leader has said is, no, that should be under the control. Maybe forgive me if I've misunderstood that, but that is, if the leader is suggesting that, you know, the third sector, the voluntary sector, CICs, you know, shouldn't be part of the equation. That's a huge shift, and I would suggest that's not. If I read exactly what you said,
I'm afraid there's been a bit misunderstanding on that one, because it is common and regular for this council to work with a whole range of partner organisations.
And Chair, that's what surprised me, because and maybe I've just misunderstood it, but I think, and if I have misunderstood it, absolutely, because that was what took me aback, was surely we're not talking about wanting to take everything over. I think the reality is that there's a good set of outcomes that can be achieved to deliver warm hubs and wider services. I think there's got to be further work. I think develop an alternate set of proposals should be your way forward. That's my view.
Can I move it on? Because one of the recommendations is that authority be delegated to prepare a detailed proposal describing exactly how this can be achieved and at what cost. And as part of the budget setting process, we do need to make sure that we are able to be in a position to take up not all of the functions of WRCC are functions that the district council comes. Some of it is county council, like Meals on Wheels, etc. But whatever the role is of this district council to be able to pick up those pieces, then we should do so. But we do need to make sure that we are doing it in a proper process, so that we are legally compliant and operationally compliant and etc. and able to do it properly. That we're not. That we don't let people down. We've got to make sure that we are capable of delivering all these services, but particularly these community hubs as well. And that does require some work. Could I suggest at this stage that when we prepare a detailed proposal in the amendment, that we do include reference to working with and consulting with the movers of the motion, but also partner organisations, which is our normal process, and that we come up with a proper process to make sure that these are delivered. I do not want to be in a position where winter starts and the community hubs are not able to function because, with all the best will in the world, the proper processes have not been able to go through and the money has not been secured. I want to make sure that we are in a position to do this properly and deliver these services. I am supportive of making sure that community hubs, warm hubs, whatever you call them, are delivered. But we need to make sure that that is properly done and be in time for this winter. And I do not want us to have a failure that has occurred because we've not been through the proper process and making sure that all the money is there, but also the legal processes are there. So, I think we're all on the same page. We just want to make sure that actually it is properly capable of being delivered. And we do not want failure to happen at a critical stage when the cost of living has gone up, the energy prices have gone up, and we have people left without proper processes and proper support when they need it the most. So my recommendation is that we adopt these recommendations, but add to it that we want to include reference to the notice of the movers of the motion and partner organisations to make it clear that what we do normally is actually written down to make sure that we follow that process. Is that acceptable to everybody? Okay. Councillor Gist.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, Leader, about the recommendations. If obviously everyone feels very strongly about this, but if you actually read them, it actually allows the head of housing to go away and look at it in more detail, and then put some money aside, perhaps in the interim, so we don't fall into the position of people being lost while this is sorted out. So I think, subject to your amendment, I think that's a good way of moving forward, and I hope Councillor Shenton and Councillor Fleming in particular are happy with that.
Are you happy that we're making sure that there is some money put aside, that we are looking at the proposals, that we will consult with you? If you come up and are able to find other funds, fine, but we cannot afford to make sure to go forward in a position where we're not certain that that funding will actually come through. So we do need to have making sure that we are looking at this as a proposal in a common sense way. But we will work with you and consult with you, but also other partner organisations, which is the norm for this council, that we'll take that forward. So long as we make that clear, that will be the process forward. Okay. Are you all happy? I'm proposing that. Councillor Coles, you seconding that? Are you all in favour that we will do that in that way? Thank you. So I put the amended recommendations before you then for you all to accept, and I will, are you all happy with that amended position? Okay, thank you. And thank you very much indeed. It is something I think that everybody feels very, very strongly about, and for the right reasons. It's about the process of making it actually happen. But it does raise the issues that a lot of us are aware of within our own wards, particularly those wards that have got, numbers of old people, but numbers where deprivation does exist. So thank you. Moving on from that to the next item on the agenda, which is the free trees for farmers rounds 4 and 5. And this one is under my portfolio. Can I just make sure that you are aware that one of the things that we will be doing under this recommendation is make sure that we're including Warwickshire Wildlife Trust to deliver the 4th and 5th round of the Free Trees for Farmers schemes. And the reason for that is that making sure that it is done properly and the trees survive and the right kind of trees are put in the right kind of ways, in the right kind of places. So it's a report that puts forward for the 4th and 5th round, which is from the Climate Change Reserve to deliver the 4th and 5th rounds of the Free Trees for Farmers scheme. Have we got anybody that wants to make any comments on that? Councillor Wally-Huggins.
Yes, this is a staggering sum of taxpayers' money, 72,400 moving forward, as well as that already spent on such matters. We don't know if the trees planted previously have actually survived. I can see that there are some stop gaps here that if they don't survive, the farmers have got to replace them. But what have you done as a council or as a cabinet to make sure that that money has been spent wisely, that the trees and the planting have been successful and they come to fruition? Because it's particularly difficult climate at the moment to be planting trees, and many don't survive. So this is a lot of money to be spending on, I presume this is part of the net zero scheme and the ecological emergency scheme, but farmers do fine work planting trees and nobody disputes that. But I do dispute the fact that taxpayers' money is being spent doing this. There's more priority on this than there is on providing money for warm hubs, and that to me is remarkably very sad. Thank you.
This is following on from a 2-year programme that has already been in existence, where Warwickshire Wildlife Trust has worked with farmers, and it is the farmers themselves that look after the trees, and this is for 2 years going forward. And the farmers themselves are well versed in looking after everything on their land, but Warwickshire Wildlife Trust gives them the extra advice they need, not only to look after them, but the right trees for the right positions. Many of them are for example, on natural flood management. So it also helps that they make sure that flooding, as happens in places like Ulster, by putting the trees in and down at Shipston and Wellsbourne, the trees are planted to make sure that they are preventing that kind of flood. But it is the farmers themselves, and I am a farmer's daughter, so farmers do know what they're doing when it comes to looking after their land and their trees. This is not just kind of happening just out there. This is farmers looking after things for themselves. Councillor Adam and Councillor Pemberton. I'll bring Councillor Adam first in, and then Councillor Pemberton, and then Councillor Passingham and Councillor Watt.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I mean, I'm supportive of this as a ward member who has a number of agricultural businesses and farms in my ward, and obviously the district is made up predominantly of agricultural land. I think that the context that we need to bear in mind is that actually it's very difficult economically for farming businesses to operate currently, but there is also still a burden on them to increase their net biodiversity, and that's a legislative burden from government, again rightfully so, because it does improve on all the factors that you've just outlined. But I think from our point of view as the local council, it's imperative that we enable them to operate as sustainable agricultural businesses that then go on to effectively feed us and steward the land responsibly. So I think appreciating that it is a lot of money, it's actually money well spent that goes much broader than just planting trees. It's going on to make our rural economy stronger, but also make the sustainability of the country stronger in our small part. So and this is the broad perspective, but also speaking to farmers in my ward. It is clearly well received. So no, I think it needs to be read in that context.
And I'd like to just draw attention to 1.10.3, which is it's a requirement of the scheme that farmers commit to replacing any trees that are received through the scheme that do not survive following planting. So they are committed themselves to have to replace any trees that do not survive. This is extra to the grant. This is not in the grant. This is a commitment that they have to undertake. And they are distributed in January to ensure they're planted at the correct time of year to maximise survival rates. Councillor Pemberton next, and then Councillor Sarah Wally-Hoggins and Councillor David Curtis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. We know what the input is. What I'd like us to consider is the outcome and how we can find a way to demonstrate the benefit of the outcome, both to our members and to our residents. So I'm just asking that some thought is given. So, for example, Chair, you referenced the impact that additional tree planting can have to mitigate flooding. So, for example, and over the medium span, can we, for example, say that we've made a difference? And I think that's a call that, particularly at a time where there is a challenge from different areas about how money is being spent. This is no different to any other area of spend in so much as show the outcome that you achieve. It may not be a hard and measurable outcome, but if we can find some way of being able to, at perhaps the end of next, in a year's time, to be able to say, these were the inputs, these were the sites where we did this, this is what we've tried to do, just to start to help and give the comfort that we're actually, whilst intuitively, planting trees, but you can't plant enough trees to solve the problem, if you catch my drift. So are we making sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck in terms of we're a small district council, we can do all this? That's just the thought I want to put into your heads about, can we think further down the line about how we might demonstrate what we've achieved, because I think that would be really useful.
Yeah, Councillor Pemberton, I'm very happy that Ovian Scrutiny invites Warwickshire Wildlife Trust to come and speak to them about this, and particularly maybe do a review a year or so after, about the kind of project and what they've achieved. They have been overseeing it, so that's just a suggestion. It's not obviously I cannot ask the chair of Ovian Scrutiny to take anything on board, but it is a suggestion that maybe that could be. It's a suggestion that maybe that could be considered in future. Councillor Passingham, and then Councillor Wally Hoggins, and then David Curtis. Councillor Curtis to wind up, and then we'll go to the recommendation.
I very much welcome the allocation of this £72,000. Only, I think about 2 weeks ago, I had an email off the chair of a parish meeting in my ward, from who is a farmer and happens to be the chair of Warwickshire NFU this year, saying what is happening with the Trees for Farmers scheme, and how much the farmers appreciated it in the past, and so there's obviously a demand for it, and for all the reasons that have been stated about flood management and ecology and wildlife, it's a very important initiative.
And then Councillor Wally Huggins, then Councillor Curtis.
Yeah, it's just to come back to my original question, which you didn't answer, Chair, which was how does this council know that the trees have survived and that the money literally hasn't died? And is this 72,400 just a subsidy for the Wildlife Trust so that they can continue infinitum? How do we know that that money being allocated is actually being spent on trees? Because we must be able to have something tangible. We have to be able to monitor the growth rate of it. Are you having site visits to look at these trees?
I've actually been out in every single round of the distribution of trees to the farmers. I've seen the trees, the saplings. I've seen the pickup by the farmers. I've seen the range of farmers that have picked them up. And it is a condition. I am no longer a trustee of Warwickshire Wildlife Trust, but I have been a trustee, and I do know the way in which they do look after these kind of these projects. But it is a suggestion that if we want to have a report from the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust, then that is a suggestion that I've already put forward. So thank you for that. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. Just a couple of comments, a little bit of personal anecdote. It takes time to see the impact of tree planting. In previous life, I had a very large garden, about 2 acres, and I planted, at that time, Warwickshire County Council was giving away whips, and I planted about 1 acre of trees. I think it's one of the best things I've ever done. And now when I drive past that land, I see 1 acre of established trees, providing shelter, cooling the climate, providing a fantastic wildlife habitat. As I say, one of the best things I've done. Trees cool our climate. Paris is now carrying out a massive urban planting scheme with that precise aim in mind. Picking up Councillor Pemberton's points about evidence, I think that's really important, but it does take time. We are not going to be able to see the evidence or the outcome in a year or two of tree planting. However, across the country, across Europe, and certainly across the world, there are many cases, and there's a great deal of evidence there that we can look at to support this tree planting scheme. And just picking up, Councillor Wally Hoggins, you said that this is a staggering sum of money, far more than we're spending on warm hubs, for example. I'd just like to correct a point of accuracy there. The budget for the tree planting scheme for 26-27 and 27-28 is a total of £73,000. The proposed budget for the warm hubs, or the community hubs, as we should perhaps correctly call them, up to 2030-31 is £225,000. So we are investing, or planning to invest, considerably more in the community hubs than in this very modest tree planting scheme. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, because I say this is for a 2-year programme, and obviously things like community hubs, once we know what that it will be for much longer. Thank you for that. So we have a recommendation, and I'm happy to propose that recommendation. Do I have somebody who will second that? Councillor Coles to second that. And are you all in favour?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. And the next item is the Community Infrastructure Levy allocations process on pages 39 to 78, update to infrastructure list. And this is Councillor Coucher.
First of all, I'd like to thank Sean Nicholson, who has prepared this report and has been the key lead officer on what is quite an extensive process. And I know, coupled with all the amount of work he's doing on the local plan, I'm kind of amazed that we've got here. So I would want to place my sincere thanks for getting us so far. Members will be aware that we took a decision to be much more strategic in terms of how we allocated SIL money, and to make sure that it was better related to areas where we had seen strategic and significant growth in population in the areas. So this report, which you've got here, really is a live document. It's really allocating, it's really indicating how we will deal with SIL this particular year. There's been quite a lot of input into it, and I know that OSC, there was quite a lot of discussion as well, as has been reported to me, and I am going to add an additional recommendation to deal with that particular point. I think the important things here are it really outlines the way in which we are dealing with SIL. We have currently at least £1.9 million actually in the pot as of January this year. But we want to maximise the amount that we may get during the reign of this council, and so therefore we are delaying the allocation probably into 27. And under table 4, you've got the new timetable for a decision. So we're hoping that 1.9 million will rise as the year goes on, and as more developments come to maturity. I'm obviously highly aware of the fact that we are right in the middle of preparing the latter stages of the local plan, and that may have further indications for that, and there may be the need for including late additions to the scheme. So in addition to the 3 recommendations that we have set out in front of us, that we note the updated infrastructure list, which is in Appendix 1, that we note some minor changes to the procedures, which are out in Section 2 in Appendix 2, and that as I say, the time scale is set out in Table 4. I'd like to put a 4th recommendation to you, so that we have got flexibility going forward, and that if additional schemes, and I'm aware at least of 2, I think, which I know members are wanting to promote, and this scheme are not included in the list at the moment, that under a 4th recommendation, that power be delegated to the head of development in consultation with the deputy leader to add further projects by the end of September, where they are in eligible areas and are supported by both local councillors and the relevant town parish councils. I think that will give us the flexibility that we need, and make sure that our list is completely up to date at that time. So on what I would propose, Chair, is that we accept all 4 of those recommendations.
Thank you very much indeed. And are you proposing that?
Yes.
Okay. And Councillor Adam, do you want to come in, and then I could bring Councillor Pemberton in?
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to second that. But it's just worth noting that going through the list of both completed and proposed projects, that it does cover a range of locations across the whole district. It can be seen that, let's say, it's hard to see the scope of everything the council does for the whole area, and I think this is actually quite a good representation of how we are trying to deliver for the whole district, and also that's not just, say, town focused. I mean, looking at it from my ward perspective, we've got areas around Southern, but you've also got the villages, things like that. So I suppose it's just worth noting that this does seem to have an adequately broad scope to actually deliver for a range of people across the district, which I think is responding directly to some of the sort of comments that we do receive. So I welcome that, and I just wanted to make it noted.
Thank you very much. And I would just, before I bring others in, I just draw attention to some of the paragraphs. 1.1.13 deals with some of the history, and 1.1.17 draws attention to the fact that no amount of funding will ever be capable of meeting all the infrastructure needs. It's a matter of using this as a toolkit of funding sources. But also 1.1.18 draws attention to the fact that as the South Warwickshire local plan progresses, the distribution of SIL will reflect strategic growth in the district. It draws attention to the fact that it's not a caveat, it's not an answer to everything, and we have had problems in the past that the new South Warwickshire local plan hopes to address. I've now got Councillor Pemberton, then Councillor Sarah Wally-Hoggins.
Thank you, Chair. It's just, and to some degree, I think I share Councillor Couch's pain or potential pain in that we have two items on which we're looking to the NHS Coventry and Warwickshire Integrated Care Board and the previous administration, and this administration has grappled with the behemoth that is the NHS. I see these projects are retained. I think it's a flag, and we may find ourselves in a position where it's getting the NHS to come to the party, I think, is the challenge. So I understand and accept why they're on, but I think they're probably the two projects that leap out at me as the ones that we need to be keeping an eye on to see whether they're actually going to be delivered by the partner that's really delivering this. And I make that merely as an observation. I'm not critical at all of the fact that they're on. It's just that, frankly, the NHS let us down in delivery, I think.
Okay. Councillor Wally-Hoggins, then I'll bring in Councillor Harvey.
Yes, I'd like to follow on from something that Councillor Adams said, which is about the distribution of the SIL payments. I've asked for it a number of times, but it would be very useful, I think, for residents across the district to just have something as simple as a map that shows the distribution of where the SIL money is being paid, is being spent. I think it's easy to do, and it's visually friendly and very impactful. I raised this at OSC, but I need to raise it today as well. On page 44 of the document, we talk about here, it talks about the new GP practice on the current Ellen Badger Hospital site in Shipston Stour and the health wellbeing policy. You all know that that is not what the original SIL application money was for. There is no new GP practice on the current Ellen Badger site. The one and only GP practice in Shipston has merely rented some space within that hospital, and I'm sure that there are many people who would like to come and speak to you about the provision that is now being made at the Ellen Badger Hospital, which includes repair classes, repair mornings, Pilates classes, and singing lessons. So I think that's well shy of what the original SIL money was earmarked to be spent on. And again, I endorse what Councillor Pemberton has said, that we are, it is the NHS that we're dealing with here, but we are giving a lot of money to these institutions to deliver for our residents, and I hope that we continue to press feet to flames over such interpretations of how money can be spent, because there are residents in Stratford, in Shipston area, including my ward, are wholly dissatisfied with what's going on at the Ellen Badger Hospital. Thank you.
I'll just bring in Councillor Coucher at this point, and then Councillor Harvey, and then Councillor Passingham.
Let me just deal with those 2 points. I think in the New View magazine, there's an extremely good map of how we're using the Community Climate and Nature Fund, and I see no reason why we can't repeat that for SIL, because I think it is very helpful in demonstrating to residents how we are addressing things across the district, and particularly, I suspect, cross-referencing that with where development sites. I think both you, Sarah Wally-Higgins and Darren Pemberson, you both mentioned NHS. NHS is the most difficult, I think, organisation we deal with. I think, and I'm sure Sean Nicholson would remind us, in terms of they've only very latterly, in terms of the local plan process, come on board with the fact that actually the population might rise here, and actually there might be additional health requirements as a result of that. I would have thought that was fairly obvious 5 years ago, but anyway, that's where we are. I think in relation to Ellen Badger, I think we all share great disquiet at how that money has not been used in the way that we thought it was going to be used. I know that we have taken legal advice about whether we could enforce on matters, and it is highly problematic. So I think one of the lessons we've learned is how we do word agreements going forward to make sure they are watertight, and that what we are paying for is what we get, and not something which another party wishes to deal with. So the point is well made.
I'll bring in the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. Just a reminder that any ongoing legal proceedings aren't a matter for discussion at a meeting like this. Thank you.
I now have Councillor Harvey and then Councillor Passingham.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, OSC did discuss this particular paper. There's only one point I'd like to draw attention to, and that's the difficulty the administration has in dealing with SIL. My understanding is that the available amount of money is something of the order of £5 million. When you tot up the 25 projects for which there are requests, there are 13 which have numbers against them. Those numbers add up to £29 million. There are 12 projects for which there aren't numbers. One could speculate that's another £29 million. You are trying to get a very large court out of a very small pot. And I think your difficulties are compounded by the local plan when it's finally hits the fan, so to speak, because that is intended to be, as I understand it, largely an infrastructure-led project rather than an infrastructure following project. So there are going to be increased demands for infrastructure one way or another. This problem is big, and it's only going to get bigger. Thank you.
Yes, indeed, and that basically is what 1.1.17 says, that it's not it's not a cure-all, because but it's a toolkit of funding sources, but it draws attention to the fact that exactly what you've said. Councillor Passingham.
Yeah, thank you. It's already been said that there's never going to be enough SIL money for all the infrastructure that's needed. And with the experience of Shipston, there's already been quite a lot of development, and it's very difficult getting the SIL money in the right place. And I think this probably shows, with bolt-on developments, unplanned, so to speak, in terms of infrastructure, it's difficult getting everything linking up. For instance, all the new proposed developments in Shipston are almost at the other end of Shipston from what was the hospital and now has got quite a lot of community facilities in it. So yeah, it's just a shame, and it's going to be more difficult in the future with the way the South Warwickshire local plan has proceeded to spend the SIL money efficiently, I think.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Coucher, do you want to wind up on this debate?
Just 2 points. Yeah, clearly, SIL's never going to pay for everything, and that's one of the reasons why the South Warwickshire local plan is being infrastructure-led, because a lot of the infrastructure will need to be provided by developers, and that's why we've gone for the strategic growth areas and the new settlement, which are extremely important. So I'm hoping that actually that the South Warwickshire local plan will help to defray some of those pressures that we have at the moment. But what we do need to do is to make sure that we, with what limited resources we have, that we are using it in the most effective way, and that's the whole process, the whole purpose of this process that we've gone through. So I would recommend that we accept the 3 and the additional recommendation that I've outlined to give us that flexibility through to September.
Thank you very much indeed. So before we go to the recommendation, I'd also like to reflect the thanks on the considerable amount of work that has gone in on to put this together. And then we now have recommendations, and Councillor Coucher, you are proposing that recommendation, and Councillor Adam, and it's the amended version with an extra recommendation added, number 4.
Indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, are you all happy? And we've got a copy of that, should you wish to have a look at that. Are you all happy as the Cabinet? Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We now move on to the Warwickshire Joint Local Health and Wellbeing Strategy 2026 to 31, and that's to consider that the revised Warwickshire Joint Local Health and Wellbeing Strategy. I think this is Councillor Coles is the portfolio holder for this item.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, there are 3 recommendations before us today that the contents of the Warwickshire Joint Local Health and Wellbeing Strategy 2026-31 be noted. That is a forms and appendix. That the District Council's officers continue to engage with the process of development of a local place-based delivery plan for South Warwickshire, ensuring this aligns with the Stratford-on-Avon District's Growing Opportunities Plan, our GO plan, and that the Stratford-on-Avon District Council's officers continue their participatory role in the South Warwickshire Place Partnership in order to steer delivery of the emerging local place-based delivery plan. And I would like to point out that this is another very striking example of our partnership working with other organisations in our area and beyond our district in order to ensure that we have a cohesive, sensible, coherent, mindful plans in place feeding our strategy. And I would just, for your information, like to refer you to 1.5.2, which is part of 1.5, which is the priorities that have been identified. And those priorities having been identified will be worked on to support high-level action, and they will have their own, each priority will have its own tailored focus. And if you look at it, it is largely supporting good mental health, tackling factors that cause poverty and lead to inequalities in health and well-being, and supporting people to move more and eat well, which is part of the physical well-being of our residents. So, Leader, I would like to recommend these points to you, and we'll carry on the very good work that's in play at the moment.
And thank you very much indeed. And just to draw attention to the fact that this is a very much a partnership that works right the way across the county at the moment with lots of organisations. And the proposal is that they will continue to engage with that process of development and for the South Warwickshire and Place Partnership, and this will be brought back to Cabinet once an agreed way forward is determined and a plan prepared, which is at 1.6.3. But we've got the recommendations. I'd like to also draw attention to the fact that on page 125 of this report, which is covers actually page 39 of the general report, it talks about the deprivation that data for South Warwickshire, and it's very useful to remind ourselves that although we're generally thought of as an affluent area, it's a highly rural area, and there is deprivation, particularly in certain areas like health and various other measurements. So it's very, very useful that we have that data, and it will be very useful as we go forward into the new unitary authority being able to draw attention to what this partnership is pulling together, because we will need it in the future. Councillor Wally-Hoggins, do you want to come in at this point?
Thank you. It's a very glossy report that we have before us, and it doesn't really tell us anything that we didn't know already. But I do wonder, you know, we've got this fancy report in front of us, but it will have cost thousands to produce, let's be of no doubt about that. But sadly, it isn't going to get us any more GP appointments for people, particularly those in Studley and Southam, but I suspect that the money that has been spent on producing such a glossy report could have been better spent on that. But I note that the portfolio holder has rightfully pointed out the priorities on 1.5.2, but what this report before us today doesn't do is say what the financial implications are going to be for us as a council as we move forward with those priorities, and I would have expected that to be here as flagging that to move forward. So what are the financial implications for us as a result of this report? And I always say to people, be very careful of how, what is it you say? I'm trying to be very politically correct here. You should never judge a book by its cover, but you should never judge a report by the glossiness of the illustrations that we've got before us. I'm sure you understand my analogy here. Thank you.
It is certainly in point 1.6.2 about the next steps, which is to prepare several local place-based delivery plans, including one that will cover South Warwickshire. So there is, it's an ongoing process. Councillor Coles and then Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. As just a reminder that this council doesn't provide GPs out of its funds. This is a wide ranging many partners, and until you actually have identified and pinpointed the areas that need work and you do that properly, rather than sticking a finger in the air and assuming you think you know, this work is drilling down to make sure that the priority is identified. Once you know what the priority to deal with is, you then look at what the solutions are or where you can help or input into the work done by other partners like the NHS, and therefore you are targeting such funds. But until you know what you need to do, you don't know what you're going to do, and therefore you don't know how much money is required and where that money will come from.
Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, one of the things that struck me reading through this paper was on page 98. An estimated 80% of our health is influenced by social, economic and structural factors. Only 20% determined by the quality of health care. And I think sometimes we can get entirely focused, as Councillor Wally-Hoggins has just mentioned, on primary health care, GP appointments, but that is only 1/5 of the factors that actually affect our health and well-being. And I think this report really helps us understand all those other factors and all of the mitigation that we need to put in place to improve people's lives that lead to a healthier outcome, and actually that then places less demand on primary health care. So thank you.
And also, it does say in there as well about the importance of prioritising prevention as particularly in this South Warwickshire. The Chief Executive, and then I'll bring Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Leader. And I just want to I hope you agree recommendation 3, because as the chair of the police partnership, I probably need to declare an interest on that particular point. I just wanted to talk about the differences about how this particular wellbeing strategy has been developed compared to the previous versions, where that's been effectively a top-down approach from the county council. We have had engagement from across the piece, and the report does talk in paragraph 1.5.3 that we actually hosted an event within the council chamber to enable us in South Warwickshire to identify the priorities that are facing our particular communities and what they will be and how they will be taken forward. And the report also talks about the Growing Opportunities Plan. Now, that document itself, when it comes forward for approval, will quantify the cost to the council of implementing this strategy. So that will come. That'll come later in the year. I'm looking at Nick as a piece of work to come forward to the committee. Sorry, the one we've already agreed.
Yeah, it has been agreed already. But the funding, Nick Catt.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it has been agreed, the Growing Opportunities Plan. What's proposed to come forward is the collective decision on how the health and wellbeing strategy is implemented. Now, as you know, and I think, well, as many of us will know, we are advocating for our own Growing Opportunities Plan to be the vehicle by which these priorities are delivered in Stratford-on-Avon district, because we already have that plan. We don't need to write another one. It's simpler and more expedient to develop that or deliver that than it is to write a whole new plan, which will probably say largely the same thing.
And I mean, it is about, and it's quite clear on page 125 about prioritising the prevention, but just making sure that the support reaches those people who really need it, and it's not always apparent exactly who does need it, and it's both visible and hidden deprivation that we're addressing, and both this one and the GO plan will be very, very key foundations for the future of the unitary authority. So I recommend it from that point of view. Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you very much. I suspect I'm now getting into the dip after staying up for the game, because I was wired beforehand. I'm really, really, really sorry. But this is Emperor's New Clothes. I'm sorry. We had a top-down approach from the County Council, which told us that we need to focus on mental health and well-being, focus on prevention, physical activity and deprivation. Now we've got a bottom-up review that says we're going to focus on mental health and well-being, focus on prevention, early intervention, physical activity. For goodness sake, and Nick, thank goodness you were saying, let's just not do another report. Our job is to make a difference to people's lives, and I see strategy after strategy. And yeah, it's great we've been engaged, but I think my plea, if you will, is that you guys are in these meetings, you're in this strategy. Let's start, and I know that it happens, okay, and I'm not being critical, particularly of our officers, but there are people with real lives out there couldn't give a absolute fig about a report. They want us to be making a difference to their lives. So I suppose the question is, and taking the trees thing, in a year's time, what are we going to be able to show? How many people's lives have we made a difference to? And I think that's the really important thing, because these are great reports and you might call it glossy, but we keep coming back. It's not anything new that says we've got to focus on creating conditions to support good mental health and well-being, prioritising children. These are not new messages. These are not new challenges. And I suspect that we're not the only authority that is more bound up in reports and process. It's just the plea, what are the outcomes going to be? How many of us are going to be able to find people in our wards whose lives have been changed by the outputs? And I apologise, it may just be that I'm getting tired now.
Thank you very much.
I think that's those are the important things.
I'll bring in Hannah Buckley, who's head of this department. That's where we're taking this forward.
So I just wanted to start by outlining this is a statutory requirement, so we have to have this.
Yeah, I get it.
And I hear the comments about it being glossy, but actually part of that is about making it a bit more inclusive, because I don't know about anybody else, but documents that are pages and pages of words are quite hard to engage with. So the glossiness probably was the least amount of work that was done at the end, and that is about making it much more accessible. Having a strategy that really clearly sets out on an evidence base what the priorities are, it enables us to focus action. I understand that things might not change. Mental health is a huge issue that is impacting us globally, most certainly is impacting in this country. I'd be entirely surprised if there was any health and wellbeing strategy that didn't reference it, because it isn't something that we're going to resolve in the lifetime of this strategy in 5 years. I imagine we're probably still going to be talking about mental health in 50 years' time, because the point is it's about that ongoing dialogue and that ongoing recognition of an issue and how we work with it. But what we've got with the Go plan is a really specific, tailored set of actions that are designed around the specific nuances of the district, thinking about rurality, thinking about some of our new communities, and think about what actions and interventions we can put in place, working as a broader partnership and looking at it across South Warwickshire and even across the county, both of which will be really important regardless of the outcome of local government reorganisation. And within the Go plan, we absolutely have got those actions that we can measure the impact of and say, we delivered this intervention, and as a consequence, here are the things that are better for residents of this district. But what we can't do is get beyond that statutory requirement to have the strategy, and I would expect there to be incredibly clear links when we bring back forward the housing strategy, which, heads up, will also be glossy because we want it to be accessible for people to be able to engage with. But things like homelessness, things like poverty, deprivation, we would expect all of those interlinks to be within the housing strategy, the homelessness element, and about how it collectively all contributes to making the district a place where people can thrive and that we promote their health and well-being.
Thank you for that. And as we move forward into a unitary authority, it will be absolutely vital that we have the ability, the knowledge, the data to be able to bring all of these things together. I mean, we don't know the outcome. It could be a South Warwickshire. I hope it will be a South Warwickshire unitary, but being able to bring together all the partners, all these actions to be able to bring together into whatever we do as a new unitary authority, having these strategies, having this data, we'll be able to bring together and develop, bring it into action plans where we've already got the partnerships fully engaged, and we've got the data and the strategies to be able to bring it together to get real action. So thank you very much, and thank you for all the work that's gone on into delivering this thing. Councillor Coles, are you moving the recommendation? I'm happy to second the Rose recommendations. Are you all in favour? Okay, agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on, we've now got the resources portfolio, and sorry, I've been asked just to have a comfort break. Is do you want? Or you can just carry. No. Yeah. Okay. I'm happy for you to leave them without necessarily break everybody else. Okay. Then moving on to the next item, resources portfolio of the capital outturn 25 and capital slippage. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. I've got these 5 reports. I'll try to be detailed, but without going into, well, keeping us too long. So, first of all, yes, we have the capital outturn report. First of all, I'd like to thank the finance team for all of these reports. They're very comprehensive, a lot of detail in them, and a number of comprehensive appendices. So the recommendations, this report provides Cabinet with details of the provisional capital outturn 25-26, with the recommendation that the capital budget for 26-27 be increased by £10,386,479 for slippage as listed in Appendix 3, financed by the funding and capital receipts as budgeted for in 25-26. and any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by the portfolio holder, the relevant portfolio holder, or if required, a further report to Cabinet. You can see Table 1, the opening balance of 6,233,922 is a minor adjustment from the draft figure on 31st of March 2025 of £6,337 and £6,337,083. Just a minor adjustment there. 1.2 in February 25, Council agreed capital expenditure for 25-26, totalling just over 2.6 million. With the amendments agreed by Cabinet to date, the total capital expenditure budget for current year, including Section 106 and other additions and slippage, is now just over 13.7 million. And that's derived from the addition and removal of budget changes summarised in Table 2 on page 138. And that's also shown in Appendix 1 on page 145, with the breakdown by service in the following pages. The actual expenditure for the period to 31st of March 2026, 2.27 million, is shown in Appendix 1 in detail. And there is a summary of Section 106 and SIL monies for capital projects. We've been talking about SILs already. That's shown in Appendix 2 on page 151. Details of some of the more significant variances are shown in points 212 to 219 on pages 139, 140. And just picking up from the report from Overview and Scrutiny, the favourable position on... Sorry, no, I'll come to that in a second. Sorry. First of all, 2.14, housing to rent. That was picked up by Overview and Scrutiny. I wouldn't mind asking the portfolio holder, Councillor Coles, if she'd like to add a comment at this point.
Yes, just as... Not showing. Yes, the details obviously could be supplied by the head of housing, but I would say that in order to spend this money, you have to actually identify what you need, where you need it, what properties would meet that need, and then get on with buying it. And that is the process point, but you can do the technical side.
Yep, so we have gone through that process. We've now got a list of the types of properties that we need and the areas in which we need them. We've identified a set of properties that are on the market at the moment, what it would cost if we were to be successful in purchasing them, both in terms of any fees that would go hand in hand with that, but also the level of works that would be needed. So we are progressing those in relation to seeking to buy them.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, because I think it's really important that Cabinet and others see that we are really making progress in that investment. And the Cabinet will be pleased to note progress on the installation of solar panels on Southam and Studley leisure centres. 217.217. Yes, sorry. Something has moved, not 217. I want to refer to the Orbit infrastructure, Heart of England. This relates to an agreement made when the transfer of housing stock to Heart of England Association took place back in 1995. We are obliged to maintain common areas at the properties transferred, i.e. drying areas for flats, and the agreement allows for up to 87,000 per annum. The last time these works took place was in 22-23, hence the total slippage of £261,000. So that's slipped forward, and that's shown in Table 3 and Appendix 3, page 157. Evesham Place has now been completed, which is great news. Providing temporary accommodation is going to see significant savings on bed and breakfast accommodation. It's an ongoing asset for the council, and most importantly, we are providing much needed accommodation to help some of our most vulnerable residents move on. 2.2 2, the total expenditure amounting to 3,135,270 is detailed in Appendix 1. It's funded from Section 106 SIL, capital receipts, contributions from revenue, and the capital finance movement requirement has decreased in the year due to interest and loan receipts to the MRP, the minimum revenue provision, and the delayed arrival of a refuse vehicle. I believe, Mr. Burrell, that a vehicle was ordered but hasn't been delivered yet.
That's correct, yeah. There's about a 12-month lead time for a refuse vehicle at the moment.
And the refuse vehicle is currently around 230, 240,000. So, approved slippage will be monitored and reported as part of the 26-27 capital budget monitoring reports. Cabinet should note the outturn report appendix 1, page 145, records the slippage against the budgets as they were set and reported through during 25-26, whereas appendix 3, page 157, that reports it's the same slippage, but it's against the head of services responsible. The total slippage is obviously the same in both. It's £10,386,349. So the options available to the Cabinet, that the draft 25-26 outturn figure and requested slippage be noted and confirm that the slippage of £10,386,479 is added to 26-27 capital budget, and any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by relevant portfolio holder for clarification or a further report to the Cabinet. So, excellent timing. It is. So happy to take questions, Leader, but those are the recommendations I propose.
Councillor Wally-Huggins has come in and Councillor Pemberton.
Yes, a slippage of £10 million, £386,479. Slippage, it's such a lovely word, isn't it? But really, what I look at with the word slippage is a failure to deliver. And that's the truth about all of this. It's a failure to deliver. It's a failure to spend that money on what it was earmarked for. And yes, I understand entirely about the matters arising around finding the right properties, as outlined in Councillor Cole's portfolio. It is essential that time is taken in order to spend that money wisely, because that is what that vulnerable sector needs that money to be spent on. But I do hope that slippage is used in the letters to people that are unable to pay their council tax or business taxes at the moment. We're so sorry that there's been this slippage. Or is it you failed to pay, you failed to make sure that payment is there? It's got to be sort of some sort of uniform kind of wording here. So if you're going to use the word slippage, let's not forget slippage means failure to deliver. Thank you.
Councillor Curtis.
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to address some of those points of slippage, and Mr. Boll may wish to come in as well with some more detail. We need to be careful. Sometimes projects simply take longer to deliver than originally estimated. The slippage on the Elizabeth House windows replacement is considerable, but do we stop that project now because we haven't been able to deliver it in time, or do we continue with that extremely valuable work in hand? The Southern, now I'm sorry, I can't remember which of the leisure centre solar panels has, it's Southern. We have problems, the contractors have problems getting access to the roof. That can only be done in school holidays. So again, we either think, oh no, we're not going to carry on with that work, or we slip that work, we slip that budget into an appropriate time where we will be able to deliver that programme. I understand, Councillor Wally-Hoggins, your concerns, but I think it is much better that we continue the projects on a realistic timetable and we make that slippage to enable us to deliver those projects. Richard, is there anything particular you'd like to add?
I think you've explained it quite well, actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And I know that, for example, when they looked at Southern, they found that there was leakage on the roof, which they hadn't anticipated before. So you have to fix the literally fix the roof, the leakage on the roof before you put the solar panels in. You can't wait till afterwards and then go back and fix the leaks in the roof. So you have to readjust the timetable to get to the eventual aim, but adjust the other problems on the way.
Thank you. And I think just going back
anybody-
to Councillor Cole's comments about the housing to rent, it's really important that we don't just go out and spend the money. We want to get that investment made, but we have to identify the exact type of properties that we need, where they are available, before we just go out and spend £2.5 million on that. So inevitably, with any large-scale capital project, there is almost always delays, whether it's at local government level or national government level.
Yeah. Hannah Buckley, do you want to come in at this stage? Because you can probably give us a little bit more of background to...
I just wanted to come in actually about the point about council tax, because I don't agree that there's kind of a similarity. I think it's apples and pears, because council tax is statutory, but we're required as a council to bill and then to collect the money. But where there is a little bit of an overlap is that if somebody does experience financial difficulty and they simply cannot deliver against that bill within the year, we do sometimes agree for that payment to be stretched out over an extended period and into the next year, because we recognise that sometimes things happen in terms of people's situations. But we wouldn't ever refer to it as slippage, because we didn't need to use language that's really clear to our residents in terms of what their liability is and what the next steps are.
And it is one of the things that has been brought in is the ability to help people at an early stage before they get into difficulty, rather than wait until they've got into difficulty and start facing the legal consequences. And that's a new position or a new facility that this council has to be able to stop people getting into those difficulties as wherever possible in the first place. Okay, we've got, I think I've got Councillor Harvey wanted to come in, and Councillor Pemberton as well.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know whether this is the right time to make my intervention, but I did want to raise one issue, refer to one issue that arose that was mentioned at OSC. But we dealt with both revenue and capital together, so I'm in your hands as to whether you'd like me to make my point now or later.
I think perhaps...
Leader?
Yeah, you did them both together. Perhaps, unless you've got any specific things on the capital, perhaps come back on both of them together. Okay. Councillor Pemberton, and then I'll give you some extra time to be able to address both of them together. Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you very much, Leader and Chair. Councillor Wally Hoggins is absolutely right. This is a failure to deliver. It's £10.3 million of failure to deliver because projects were established with timescales and deliverables. The one I'll actually give you a free pass on is the housing, because there are so many variables into that. It's almost inevitable that's going to slip from its anticipated delivery date. And both the portfolio holder and the head of service are absolutely right about the reasons for that. But there are a number of other projects, and actually you're the cabinet. It's your job to ask the difficult questions about why these projects are not being delivered. We have a question about HVO vehicles. It's 12 months to deliver. This is not the first time we've tried to procure refuse vehicles. We all know in our own lives it's 3 to 4 months to buy a Ford Fiesta, for goodness sake, let alone 12 months for a refuse vehicle. You're not setting realistic timescales, or you're not asking the hard questions to create realistic timescales to deliver on the projects that you want to deliver upon. You have £10.3 million of spend that has slipped. You are reaching the end of we are reaching the end of our lifetime.
Can I thank you very much, Councillor Pemberton, for making those comments. But as been made, the comment has been made before. It is not a failure of delivery at all. It's a matter of when you find out that there is the holes in the roof, you don't go forward with putting the solar panels on. You make sure that the roof is fixed first, and then you put the solar panels on. It's those kind of issues.
I ask a question?
When you find that somebody is not prepared to sell the property that the council was interested in to you because you are the council, then you have to think again. There are other things that counts. This is just not. This is not the kind of thing that I ever did when I was leader of the opposition at all. Because it's showing disrespect to the officers for the work that they're doing. Thank you very much, Councillor Pemberton. Councillor Curtis, can I ask you to continue?
Excuse me, may I? The monitoring officer wants to speak.
Would you like to come in at this stage?
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation really at this particular time, which is that it's correct you are the Cabinet, and as the Chair, you have discretion to allow the observers who are councillors to ask questions, and that is a matter for you. If you have a question that you want to allow them to ask, then you do ask them. But in terms of allowing them to speak, if you have asked them to speak, then perhaps that needs to be done as well, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Curtis, would you like to wind up on your portfolio?
Just a reminder that when we took over the administration of this council, slippage was something in the region of 13 million. So, we do want to see these projects delivered, but it's not only this administration that's found difficulties in delivering those strategic projects in time. And Councillor Pemberton seems to be conflating two different issues around the refuse vehicle. As I understand, there is a shortage of vehicles at the moment. We have one on order that has been delayed. That has nothing to do with HVO. Nothing whatsoever. They're two entirely different issues. I will come on to HVO later on, because in fact we're very well under budget and our expenditure on HVO, so we'll be able to continue using HVO and reducing emissions for some years to come. Thank you, Leader.
And we now have a recommendation. Are you prepared to propose that recommendation? Yeah. Have we got anybody that's prepared to second the recommendation? Councillor Gist, are you all in favour of the recommendation to go forward? Thank you. And the next one is the capital budget monitoring report. Again, Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. So this capital budget monitoring period 1 to 2. Details of the capital for that period, so that's up to the 31st of May 2026. The recommendations are that the position on capital expenditure and income for the period 1 to 2 of 26-27 received, and any issues identified for further consideration be again addressed by the relevant portfolio holder for a point of clarification, or if required, a further report to the Cabinet. It's not a long report, obviously it's only the first two periods. Table 1 gives the opening position at April 1st of £5,228,051, which of course corresponds to the remaining accumulated estimate capital receipts as at 31st of March, as in the capital outturn report for 25-26 just received. The actual and committed expenditure for the period to the 31st of May totalling 1.99 million, as detailed in Appendix 1, page 165, again by the Head of Service with a breakdown by service on the following pages. There is a summary of Section 106 and seal monies for capital projects being held. That's shown in Appendix 2, page 171. Total balance of Section 106 is 16.3 million, including committed funds of 1.3 and after expenditure of 0. And that is correct. There is no still expenditure of year to date. I did check that figure with Nicola. So the evidence base, the draft outturn position has been prepared by comparing the actual and accrued capital expenditure against the current budget for 26-27. So the options available to the Cabinet are to receive the report on capital expenditure for periods 1 to 2 of 26-27 issues identified for further consideration by the portfolio holder or a further report.
And are you prepared to
I'd like to
propose
make
that?
those recommendations, yes, thank you.
Who's got, Councillor Coles, are you prepared to second that one? Because I know that you've got the finance background. So, in the absence of any other comments, are we all accepting those? Thank you very much. And then the next item, and because this one starts to bring in revenue, I would like to have Councillor Harvey, as overview and scrutiny, put forward the comments that were made about both cabinet and both capital and revenue. Would you like to do that before Councillor Curtis comes in so that he can address anything, or you'll wait till afterwards? Okay, Councillor Curtis first then.
Thank you, Leader. Sorry, just get my papers in order. So, yes, this is the draft revenue outturn 25-26. First point I'd like to make is the typographical error. I hope I'm getting better at this sort of thing, but I don't think I can predict a outturn position for 26-27. So on page 176, table 1, the main favourable and unfavourable service positions, it should read 25-26, not 26-27. I don't actually have a crystal ball enabling me to predict the outturn for 26-27. This summary is to provide members with the revenue outturn position for the year ending 31st of March, and to note the allocation of funding to earmarked reserves. There are 5 recommendations. I'll read them out. That the draft 25-26 outturn figures and explanation of the variances be noted. That revenue slippage of 2.5 million as set out in paragraph 1.9 be approved or amended. That the amount allocated of 2,142,386 to earmarked reserves be noted, and that the favourable variance of £513,492 is added to the general fund revenue balances, and that the write-offs contained within paragraph 110.1 be noted. So this report identifies and explains the significant variance between actual expenditure and approved estimates in 2025-26. It gives budgets for pieces of work that have been allocated to specific earmarked reserves or slipped into next year's budget, this year's budget, as they will now be delivered in the new financial year. The final budget monitoring report of 9th of March 26 predicted an unfavourable outturn of £277,500, and the actual outturn was a favourable 513,000, which was an improvement of 790,992. The main reason for that difference was in respect of the extended producer responsibility, the EPR top-up grant, meeting the previously declared shortfall, and planning and refuse income and services achieving better than predicted outturns. The EPR grant has been subject to several changes from central government. Richard, can I just check? The original grant was 2 million, and then we were told after we'd set all the budgets that it was going to be about 1.6, and then at the very last minute, too late for rebudget setting, it was put back to £2 million. It's not really a way to run a whelk stall, but it's impossible to budget accurately when central government makes these ridiculous changes at the very last minute. So, I mean, in the end, it was better. We actually got the £2 million, but there was a lot of uncertainty around that, which really didn't help. So the changes to the overall budget are set out in Appendix 3 on page 191. I've mentioned the slight typo, 25-26. The current budget shows the total net revenue expenditure for 25-26 was £19.21 million. And the report also highlights the proposed allocations to earmarked reserves of 2.142 million and slippage of 2.5 million in respect of revenue services, and that's shown in Appendix 1 and 2. Point 1.5 152, the significant operational variances. The most significant unfavourable variances are in property, council tax, corporate budget and local government reorganisation. Local government reorganisation is going to be very costly and we have to allocate adequate funds towards that. The good news is that they are offset by favourable positions in planning and enforcement, refuse collection, which is mainly the EPR grant that I've already mentioned, and investment interest of 640,000, leaving a positive outturn. Inflation has now fallen currently to 2.8%, but it's likely to increase. Interest rates are likely to remain at around 3.5% for the remainder of the year. We had a cash management working group last week, which confirmed what we all know, that globally there is a great deal of uncertainty. So I think we probably the interest we will continue to receive will probably be higher than budgeted, but I think Mr. Burrell is taking a prudent approach that income absolutely cannot be relied on. If we have a windfall at the end of the year, so much the better, but if we're relying on that increased revenue from interest rates and it doesn't happen, we could find ourselves in a very difficult place. I noticed, Councillor Harvey, maybe this is the other thing that you wanted to mention, the favourable position of off-street parking. Not a huge amount, but you're absolutely right. I think it does, as mentioned in the report from OSC, it does represent a positive growth in visitor numbers to Stratford. And I think, although they are relatively small sums, as I've mentioned previously, the off-street parking can provide a bellwether as to how well the economy of the town more widely is performing. So it's a relatively small figure in the greater scheme of things, but I think it is very, very welcome. The eagle-eyed may spot a slight variance in interest income. In Table 1, it's £639,881. In Appendix 2, it's £645,594. This is because we receive interest from HMRC if we are paid late for money that the council is owed, but as it is not investment interest, it doesn't count under investment income. So it appears under interest income in Appendix 2. So I hope that's clear. Table 1 provides an explanation for the major variances. Appendix 2 provides an alternative view. It shows the same expenditure, but based on types of income and expenditure. Some approved budgets will be delivered in the new financial year, and some of this funding has been allocated to an earmarked reserve in Table 3, and that now gives a total earmarked reserve balance of £29,983,609. Local government reorganisation, internal capacity. I'll mention this again, the earmarked reserve carry forward request of 750,000 relates to an additional resource required to meet LGR. And this is essential. We have to have additional resources to meet LGR whilst maintaining current service delivery. The LGR is imposed on us by central government. What we simply must not do is to allow services to our residents to deteriorate as we are meeting all the stress related with LGR. So I think there is a prudent amount of funding to set aside to that. 2.5 million is requested as revenue slippage for specific projects or discrete pieces of work, details of which are shown in Table 4. The write-offs are again within expected parameters. So the options available to the Cabinet, that the draft 25-26 outturn figure of 513,492 is accepted. The allocations to the earmarked reserves of £2,142,386, write-offs of £123,096 be noted, and the revenue slippage of £2,501,000 with the repurposing of the £100,000 for the public realm technical guidance be approved, amended or rejected as appropriate. And the evidence base has been prepared by comparing the actual and accrued revenue, income and expenditure against the current budget for 25-26. So I propose those recommendations as I outlined previously. Thank you, Leader.
And you are proposing those, yeah, and...
Those 5 recommendations.
Okay. Councillor Harvey, you wanted to come in from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder if you'd allow me to just make a quick point about slippage. It's an unfortunate term. It's a local authority accounting term which you don't find in the private sector. It arises in part because of the artificiality of the way we prepare our accounts. You can illustrate that by considering a capital expenditure of £1 million over 2 years, spread evenly over 2 years. By definition, at the end of year 1, you will not have spent £500,000. That will, of course, be slippage to the next year. If you had accounted on a 2-yearly period, there'd be no slippage at all. So the word slippage, it may refer to inefficiencies in monitoring projects. It may, but in large measure, in simple accounting terms, it's the disparity between the artificiality of 12 months accounts and the reality of projects taking more than 12 months. I just make that point. The only point the points that are printed on the report of the meeting, I don't particularly want to comment upon, except one point which Councillor Rice illustrated when he questioned the off-street parking. And it depends, I think the number is 84k. If 84k is 84k of 84k, it's a big number, it's a big proportion. If it's 84k of 5 million, it's a flea bite. So I would ask that those figures are presented of performance against budgeted performance, so that in percentage terms, so that people can see whether they are small numbers or large numbers. The point about asking for the end of year figures to be included on the OSC agenda was not particularly to go through nitpicking on particular points. That is something that OSC will have done as a normal part of its activities during the year. The opportunity was there, ideally, to see if there was anybody who could spot anything of particular longer term interest. And I think I found one. And I preface what I'm about to say by saying you can prove anything with numbers, and I totally agree with that and accept that. But I looked back on the corresponding figures that we looked at compared with the preceding two years, so a 3-year period. And my concern is interest generated by on balances held. And I'm concerned that there's a message which might be being missed. I compared what was being reported as the actual excess of revenue over expenditure each year with the amount of interest earned in excess of that which had been budgeted, to compare those two numbers. 3 years ago, the amount of excess interest compared with the excess of revenue over expenditure was about a third, roughly 3 million to 1 million, roughly. Preceding the second year, last year but one, 2024-25, the surplus was just over 2 million revenue over expenditure, and the surplus of interest over that which had been budgeted was almost exactly the same, 2 million, slightly more. But so we're going from a third to about the same to last year, where the excess of revenue over expenditure was lower than the amount of excess interest earned. So in other words, the council is now in the position where if it had earned the budgeted amount of interest, it would have shown an excess of expenditure over revenue, and that would have been the first time for the 3 years. Now, I'm just pointing at a trend, and I'm sure that the accountants could come out with all sorts of reasons why there's this factor and that factor and the other factor. I'm just concerned that where interest earned is concerned, the council is not completely in control. It has to manage the balances, and it has to manage its interest where it can, but interest rates are given rather than decided. I just wanted to point that out, and I think that is one of the roles of the scrutiny committee, is to spot things that the day-to-day necessarily wouldn't highlight. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
No, that is appreciated, and some of the comments that came from over in scrutiny have been discussed already. For example, about the way in which council tax debts, were collected, so those that could. Who could pay and those who wouldn't pay, etc., and the process that it will be going through, and the nuanced approach. So that was appreciated. That those comments were taken there, and they have been taken on board. Councillor Curtis, do you want to address anything like that?
Yes, I think first of all, Councillor Harvey makes a really very helpful point around the term of slippage. I mean, to take it to an extreme example, if we had a 10 million project and we only spent over 10 years and we only spent £1 million on it in year one, we'd effectively have £9 million of slippage. So I think we do need to be very careful of that term. And as Councillor Harvey says, it's a peculiarity of local government. The overall car parking, off-street parking income is in the region of, I think, about £3 million. Yes, about £3 million. So, Councillor Harvey, I hope that gives some context to that. And there was a further point, but I've lost it, so I apologise.
The Chief Executive wants to come in at this point.
The accountant in me is leaping to get out. Appendix 1, actually, of the paper does quantify the gross expenditure and income for each of the services. So, yeah, on page 187 of the agenda, the total income last year was 3.465 million estimated. So that is contained within the papers. I do agree it's a very positive sign in the local economy, because the previous 2 years we had deficits in the order of 240,000 last year and 150,000 in the previous year on car parking revenue. So that hopefully has turned a corner on that side. Thank you.
Thank you. No, just found my final point. My other point. We have had this year to set aside £750,000 towards local government reorganisation, and that does still leave us with an outturn position for the year of 513,000. So I think that overall, I always listen to Councillor Harvey with interest and with respect, because I always welcome your comments. But I think overall, when we look at the figures, look at the council's finances across the piece, we are in a very, very sound financial position. And I think many local authorities up and down the country would actually be very envious of the strength of our financials at the moment. Thank you, Leader. So unless there are other comments, I propose those.
And the point is taken that being able to do trends, I think, is something that is always beneficial, because as a scientist myself, I like to be able to see not just the figures, but the trend as things go forward. And I'm not an accountant. But you've proposed the recommendations. Who's going to second the recommendations? Councillor Coles is going to second them. Are we all in favour? Agree. And then the final one is that comes under the resources portfolio is. Oh, is that it now? No, I thought yes. It's the revenue budget monitoring report period, 26 to 27, pages 195 to 210. And you've even got one more item beyond that.
I do apologise. Right, another excellent report from Jess. Thank you very much, Jess. So this is to update Cabinet on the position of Council's revenue, expenditure and income as at period 2, 31st of May 2026, with an estimated net outturn position for each service for 26-27. Obviously, it is, I always caveat this report at this time of year. We are very early in the year. and to update on the financial position of the HART adaptation scheme and to request additional funding to meet statutory duties. The Cabinet on the Council's revenue expenditure income as at period 2, 31st of May with estimated outturn. So the recommendations, there are 4 recommendations now, that the actual net variance as at period 2 and estimated revenue outturn for 26-27 are received. Any issues identified for further consideration be addressed by the relevant portfolio holder or a further report to Cabinet. 2, that the request for the additional funding of 300,000 for HART contained within paragraph 2.1 be approved, and that the write-offs within paragraph 4.1 and 4.2 be approved. This is a high-level summary identifying variances at service level. The period 2 position is used as a base to give an estimated outturn position. And again, items specifically mentioned are services that show or are anticipated to show the greatest variances. Appendix 1, page 203, gives a full breakdown of the Council's services. Appendix 2 gives the breakdown by category. Appendix 3, the amendments agreed to the original budget. And Appendix 4, page 209, lists the current earmarked reserves. On the HART, additional funding for HART demand for adaptations has remained high, with the budget for this year of £1.2 million already being committed. The funding for 25-26 was £1.2 million, topped up by a further 84,000 from government, and Cabinet previously approved an additional 250,000 in 25-26, all of which was committed. So to enable the Council to continue to meet its statutory duty, an additional £300,000 is required in year. And that's in last year, isn't it? This year. It's in, sorry, in this year. This will be ring-fenced for meeting the Council's statutory duty. Any discretionary adaptations or funding above the 30,000 statutory threshold will be paused for the remainder of 26-27. So I think that's very important, that we want to see that service continuing and to be able to fund it. So that extra additional £300,000 is required in year, and I hope Cabinet will approve that. The period 2 position is an unfavourable 468,535. However, estimated outturn for the year is expected to be a favourable position of 250,000. But as I caveat that, we are only at the end of period 2. Notification of write-offs. Council tax and NNDR are within expected parameters, and there is explanation of 2 further accounts: undeliverable rental income, a tenant going into liquidation with £6,250 owed, and another non-domestic rate, economically unviable to pursue from the estate following the death of the owner. I think sometimes we have to be pragmatic that the costs of actually trying to recoup the money would probably outweigh the time and the cost and the revenue that we'd gain. Sorry, lost my place again. Here we are. So I'm happy to take questions over these variances, but explanations seem clear on the variances, and there is a full list of the variances in Appendix 1. Budget monitoring statement. It does give an estimated outturn for the year. Investment interest, as I say, remains higher than we originally budgeted, and although inflation has dipped to 2.8, it's going to remain sticky, I think. Breakdown of expenditure by category in Appendix 1 and 2, and we have the full estimated outturn revenue reserves in Appendix 4. And you'll see that the expenditure on HVO is considerably under budget. When we estimated it, I think, 2 years ago. Using it in our refuse fleet considerably reduces emissions across the district. And that underspend will be carried forward to fund future years. The solar carport funding, solar carports in the leisure centre car parks, including suitable battery to allow for EV charging. These initiatives, combined with the installation of solar panels on the leisure centres, we've already talked about the trees for farmers, they underline this Liberal Democrats administration commitment to net zero, to reducing the impacts of climate change. Goodness me, with the recent heat waves, this is probably going to be the coolest summer for the next 50 years. Think about that. That's where our children and grandchildren are going. We must reduce reliance on fossil fuels to achieve those aims. So, just a thing to mention, I'm delighted to see that we are continuing our partnership with the Graham Fulford Charitable Trust. That's had a fantastic take-up. As I said previously, I had this done. It was great. Evidence base has been prepared by comparing the actual and accrued revenue, income and expenditure against current budget for 26-27. The options available to the Cabinet, the position of the expected revenue outturn is received, and any issues identified for further consideration by relevant portfolio holder further report that the write-offs contained in paragraphs 3.1 and 3.2 be approved, and I propose those recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I have Councillor Wally Huggins wants to come in and make a comment.
Yes, the funding for Heart, obviously I wholeheartedly endorse that, but my question is it enough money? Because we have got some considerable amount of money raised with interest on money being held in accounts, and I don't know the answer to this, but we know from visits to coming before OSC that there is a massive demand on these services. And my question really is if we were minded to, or you were as Cabinet minded to actually give them a lot more money, would it actually increase their ability to rapidly turn around the requests for improvements? And would we know that our residents' lives will improve exponentially as a result of the adaptations that are made, and it is a statutory obligation. So I guess what your Reform UK group leader is saying to you, do we actually need to spend more on this essential service for the most vulnerable to ensure that we've got rapid turnaround, and so that more people can have those quick fixes done? I mean, I would just hate, as you've rightly pointed out at the moment, to be in this hot weather and not being able to access a shower because you haven't got those adaptations in mind. So I'm asking, do we need to go away, and do we actually just need to bite the bullet and clear the backlog and just start again? Because just keep coming back and saying we've got to add more money. I'd just rather you just said, right, this service, we far more demand than we ever expected. We need to spend some money. And actually, there isn't a single councillor in this across anywhere that would say, we're not happy with that. I really want you to spend some of the money that we've got held in reserves on this. Thank you. I'm not bothered who answers that question, and it isn't a trick question. Thank you.
Before I bring Councillor Curtis in, there actually was a report on this before, because it's all changing, because the council that runs Heart at the moment is no longer wanting. So we have to address the new structure and who exactly is going to run that one. And that was in a previous report. Councillor Curtis.
I'll defer to Hannah Buckley to answer this in more detail.
So there isn't a simple response to the Heart question. We have been doing quite a sort of a detailed dive into the data that's available from Heart, which doesn't necessarily give us all of the answers that we would want in relation to the service. So what we've identified is that the 300,000 will enable us to continue to meet the statutory demand based on recent years' trends. The challenge that we've got is that, of course, a little bit like homelessness approaches, we can do an evidence-based intelligence prediction of what might come through the door, but we don't actually know, because people can move into the district, people can have sort of life-changing accidents, so we can't accurately say that will absolutely be it. But what we've put forward is that is the summit that we believe that we need in relation to delivering that statutory duty. There is a much wider piece around Heart Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, who are the current host of Heart, have given notice to the partnership that they don't intend to continue to host it beyond the end of this year. There is clearly going to need to be a piece of work to determine what will come following that. Some of that will be dependent on what the outcome of local government reorganisation is, because if it's a single unitary, we might look to replicate Hart. If it's 2 unitaries, we might look at developing a South Warwickshire approach. So there's a lot of work that does need to go on in the background to this, and there may well be further reports that come back around Hart. I'd be quite surprised if there isn't. There's 2 council plan actions that are related to adaptations. But what I would say is this is the money that we need to be able to continue to deliver the statutory duty, and hand in hand with that, we are looking at all of the evidence around why are we adapting properties? Is that the right outcome? We get a lot of people that come through the housing register that are given a high priority because of their medical need, but then want to move into a property that isn't suitable for their needs, when there are properties that are suitable for their needs. And very often that's driven around people wanting a new build, but because they're new builds, the landlords won't approve any adaptations of a significant nature for the first year, which is about allowing the property time to settle. So we're also working with our RPs to say, actually, where we've got an evidence need, for example, for wet rooms, how do we work with them so that the new properties are developed so that we've got a percentage? So there's lots and lots of different actions, helping people to move into properties that meet their needs, looking at what we're spending our money on and why, and how does that influence future housing development in the property. And we're also, as part of the 2.5 million, we're looking at buying some properties that will meet people's needs. So we've put that forward as that's the evidence base for what we need right now to continue to meet our statutory duty for the remainder of the year, subject to the caveat that I can't predict what applications we're going to get or what different adaptations people will need.
That is very, very helpful indeed, and it's something that obviously will come back further. We'll come back further on. Councillor Curtis, are you going to kind of move this motion, recommendation rather?
I'd just like to say that that's really helpful, Hannah. Thank you very much indeed. And I think I hope, yes, we have allocated sufficient funds for this year. I would anticipate that between now and when we move into the budget setting process, we'll expect to see a number of reports from you, because obviously currently the future of Hart is in question. But if we can have the evidence presented as part of the budget process, I'm sure this is a scheme or something similar, whatever it is, that we would wish to ensure is absolutely fully funded as far as we are able. We don't have a bottomless pit, obviously, but I absolutely take Councillor Wally-Hoggin's points on board, as I'm sure we all do. But thank you, Hannah, very much. So I'll move those recommendations, Chair.
And I'll second it this time. Go on. Oh, thank you very much indeed. And all of you in favour of those recommendations. Thank you. And then finally, for Councillor Curtis, is the annual Treasury Management Review, pages 211.
I know you've all been looking forward to this all morning. Thank you, Liz. So thanks, Kate, for this report. Only two recommendations that the actual 25-26 Prudential and Treasury indicators detailed in Appendix 1, page 217 are approved, and that the annual Treasury Management Report be received. Not a great deal to say in this, you'll be relieved to hear. Cabinet should note points 1.3 and 1.4 on pages 211, I believe, which notably the regulatory environment places responsibility on members for the review and scrutiny of Treasury management policies and activities. And this council confirms that it has complied with the requirements under the code to give prior scrutiny to all of the above Treasury management reports by the Cabinet. Member training on Treasury management issues was last given on the 30th of October. 1.61 interest rates dropped by 0.25%, with 3 further 0.25% cuts The starting bank rate of 4.5, May, August, then finally December to the current rate 3.75. As I mentioned earlier, it's likely to stay in that sort of area, and it's also expected that UK inflation could rise to over 4% during the following year. It's, you know, given the world situation at the moment, markets are very volatile. Page 6 of Appendix 1 does give more detail on the investment strategy and control of interest risk rate. And there's also a helpful summary of the United States and Eurozone economies. 173, Council remained internally borrowed to fund its capital investment up to the 31st of March 2026. Capital expenditure was forecast at 9.2 million in the mid-year review. The actual position at the 31st of March is 3.13 million, which was shown on page 137 of the capital outturn report. And the proposed slippage for 25-26 was shown on page 141 of the capital outturn report. The evidence base, the Council employs the services of MFUG Corporate Markets. They advise on treasury management and interest matters. They issue interest rate forecasts and advice on treasury management. And we had our most recent treasury management report last week, wasn't it, Richard? Which gave us a helpful update. But I mean, part of the update was we really don't know what's going on. It is
in the world. In the world, that
yes,
is.
It is
Yeah.
such. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So I think again, the council's finances overall, we are in a very strong position, but we are subject to the vagaries of what else is going on, and there are some things such as Mr. Trump that we simply cannot control.
Okay, thank you very much. So
Chief
you've got two
Executive is sighing.
recommendations. Are you proposing those two recommendations?
Those two recommendations, yes, thank you.
I'll second those to shorten things. And are we all in favour of those recommendations? Thank you very much. Now we're moving forward with the issues arising from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Harvey, have you anything else other than what you've raised to be able to raise with us today, from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee?
I'm conscious of the hour, Chairman. I have nothing more to add.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate a written report because it gives us the chance to be able to look at things. So thank you very much indeed. I've had nothing on the Cabinet committees. I've not been notified of any request under the en bloc items for anything to be discussed there, and nor have I been given anything under the other matters or urgent business. So at that stage, I think I will declare the meeting closed.